Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Philanthropist and AutoZone founder Pitt Hyde, tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Pitt Hyde, founder of AutoZone, founder of the Hyde Foundation. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Along with Bill Dries, reporter with the Daily Memphian. We'll try to touch on a lot of things that the foundation has been involved with over the years, and maybe even talk just a bit about AutoZone. But probably the biggest news and the thing that kind of got you here right now is the riverfront and Memphis in May and the ongoing tension between entities of what's going to happen with Tom Lee Park and the big investment of some $70 million and the future of Memphis in May, specifically, you know, the music festival and the barbecue festival. And so I guess my question is, the Hyde Foundation's role in this is what?
Well, we're a supporter and a funder of the project. Barbara and I, you know, we see the riverfront is such a great fiscal asset and one that we have not fully capitalized on, and we think it's a wonderful opportunity for Memphis to do something great. You know, when we took on the Shelby Farms Park project, there were a lot of people that, you know, were naysayers and everything else, and when we did that, we saw that as something that could really be great for Memphis and differentiate us, you know, the largest urban park in America. And the one thing we learned from there was if you're going to do something, really do it at a very high bar. And so we hired, you know, Jim Corn out of New York, world-class architectural design guy. And I think everyone will agree today that it's a great asset for our community. And the usage has gone through the roof and everybody loves it. And we had opposition initially on that even. But the thing in looking at the riverfront, we see a great analogy with the Shelby Farms Park.
Which was about a $50 million
No, it was a $70 million.
70 million. Okay,
70
yeah,
million.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, how could the riverfront be 70 million if the whole park? Well, remember, in the park, the big focus of that 70 million was the heart of the park, we call it, which is the lake, the buildings surrounding the lake, the bike paths, the playground. So, you know, you can't, it's really not comparing apples to apples, say 4,500 acres and 30 acres, although we're really, ultimately, we see the riverfront as the 6 miles worth of riverfront we have. But we think the riverfront has terrific opportunity. You know, we've got all the dynamics going downtown right now, but the connectivity to the riverfront has never been good. You know, our foundation office, we sit right on the bluff overlooking Tom Lee Park, and I see all these tourists every day that'll walk down Beale Street and they'll stop, and that road and all that just is like a barrier, and but they want to see the river and they want to connect with the river. And I think it's a fabulous opportunity. And if you look, just the small park, you know, the small work they've done so far since we've connected all the bike paths, the river line, you know, that goes all the way to the Greenway, all the way to the Big River Crossing Bridge. The traffic's gone way up, and in our river park there, that small pocket park we got there, the usage there has just gone through the roof. So I think we've already demonstrated that there's a huge demand to reconnect to the river.
So, and let me also do a quick disclosure that recently the Hyde Foundation, I mean, slight left turn here, the Hyde Foundation granted money to the Daily Memphian, which we appreciate immensely, and expansion of coverage and free access for those who can't afford it and so on. So just a full disclosure on that. But back to the issue at hand. So it's a $70 million that's being talked about putting into the riverfront. And all kinds of, you know, reconfiguration of Tom Lee, and we'll sort of go through some of those details. But there's still the fundamental question that people seem to be asking and fighting about is whether Memphis in May can coexist with a redesigned riverfront? And then the second part of that question is, should they coexist?
The thing that's ironic to me is that we would have never been a backer or supporter of this project if we didn't think it was going to be an enhancement for both. One thing that most people don't realize is, you know, I've been a supporter of Memphis in May from day one. In fact, Cynthia Ham and I sat down and figured out that we ought to do a music fest. And I was running AutoZone at the time, and I agreed to be the first sponsor. And we were a main stage sponsor for like 20 years. And twice, when they ran out of money, I led the charge to raise to offset the deficit. So I'm a lifelong supporter of Memphis in May. And of course, we've had Memphis in May engaged from day one, contrary to some of the stuff you hear. And we have made over 12 revisions to our plan to accommodate issues that they have raised.
Some of which is actually on the Memphis River Park site. There's some overviews of where tents would go and where stages would go. If people kind of want to visualize that.
And the thing, why I think personally, I think it's going to be an enhancement for Memphis in May. You know, certain people call it Memphis in mud because of, you know, it's a rainy time of the year. And that Tom Lee Park, you know, was just pumped up clay from the bottom of the Mississippi River, and there's no drainage on it whatsoever. So if you get rain, the water's just going to sit there. One of the first things we do is we remove the surface soil, and we put in all the drainage and everything. So it's going to be more like a golf course. And of course, we've also designed it where the stages are positioned where you don't have to have tractor trailer rigs running all across the park.
There's more permanent kind of infrastructure for that. So other festivals, other things can happen.
You know, electrical hookup, everything. And so we think it's an enhancement. And, you know, they kept raising the issue about, well, it won't accommodate Memphis in May. Well, we hired one of the leading event planners in the country to come down here and lay it out both for the barbecue and for the music festival. And we've gone over and over that, and we've spent like an extra $100,000 trying to accommodate those guys.
Let me say too, we've reached out to Memphis in May, and actually Jim Holt was scheduled to come on, give or take a month, 6 weeks ago. Then the mediation started between the two entities, which kind of, they were part of that mediation. They are meant to be radio silent, and it's kind of a muddy situation. But we're reaching out again because the mediation has been paused, or there's a little confusion about that. We would love to get some folks from Memphis in May on to continue to talk through this thing. But let me get Bill involved here.
So what do you think is the path between Memphis in May and the Memphis River Parks partnership? Is there a point at where they meet, or is this the plan's already there, in your view?
As I mentioned a minute ago, I mean, we have modified the plan over 12 times and redrawn it and everything else to accommodate issues they've raised. And it's sort of been like a whack-a-mole situation from our point of view, is that well, we've got two remaining issues. All right, what are they? We address those two remaining issues, and then it's two more, and it's two more. So everything, and look, I've sat in on those sessions. I've looked at every plan that's been drawn, and, you know, I'm totally convinced, and like I say, I don't have an axe to grind. I'm for something good for Memphis, and I'm certainly a supporter of Memphis in May. So I'm totally convinced that it will accommodate both, and really it be an enhancement.
Is moving the festival, moving Memphis in May for a year, is that what's holding some of this up?
You know, some people that's really an issue for, and of course nobody likes to have to move, but, you know, if it's going to be an enhancement for the next 30 years, you know, a move. And the mayor, we're convinced that there's several locations downtown that we can accommodate the event. And as you recall, I mean, the barbecue contest moved, you know, one year when the high water was there to the fair, to the
Tiger Lane.
Yeah, and it seemed to work very well, and it didn't seem like their attendance or anything fell off. So I think, yeah, it's always a hassle to have to relocate for a year, but, you know, that I think for the long-term benefit, and particularly for the long-term benefit for the park and all Memphians, I think it's well worth the extra effort.
Let's move to, separate from the ongoing conversation, mediation between the two entities, just breaking down that $70 million, at least at a somewhat higher level. The $70 million, where does that money come from? It is not, I think the Hyde Foundation is committed to big money to it, but there's some other sources of money for that $70 million.
Well,
right?
Of course, the state allocated $10 million. The city, through the TDZ, is allocating, the number changes somewhat, but I think it's roughly $20 million. And the counties had under consideration supporting it as well, which I think they probably will. And of course, Carol and her organization are raising private money.
Carol Coletta, the head of the Memphis River Parks, used to be RDC. And if Jim Strickland were on the show, he would be quick to say that TDZ money is not the operating money, it's the money that comes from sales tax. And so I always like to kind of note that. In terms of then breaking down the improvements, we talked a lot about the structures. Again, a lot of it is on the website. But there's the cobblestone, some $10 million to redo the cobblestones and make those accessible and have more of almost what I would think of as a pier along the water, a kind of walkway along the water, right?
Yeah.
A whole lot of trees, a whole lot of landscaping. Is any of that money allocated to Mud Island River Park? Or is that a whole separate challenge, problem, and opportunity?
Well, the Mud Island River Park, that everyone's been searching for what is the ultimate solution there to make it where it draws more crowds and all that. And Carol Coletta and her team have been working hard to come up with that. But our first focus is on the riverfront itself. Now, there have been enhancements in what they do. It's free now. They have more activities over there. The usage has gone up, so they're not totally neglecting it.
But everyone sort of thinks eventually to make it right, a whole lot of money is going to need to go into Mud Island.
Well, nobody really knows. There have been a bunch of plans in the past.
Yeah.
None really came to pass, and I think we'll figure it out. But one thing that's happening, just connecting the bike paths, has really increased the traffic on Mud Island.
Yeah.
So again, I think we'll come up with a good solution for it, but I do think the highest and greatest return for the city is to focus on the adjacency right now.
Yeah. And a couple more things that have been talked about. This $70 million does not include an aquarium, right? That's been talked about, but this is not an aquarium. That's something that's still kind of in the
remember the whole aquarium deal. I've had a lot of conversations with the mayor and others about it, and that was originally brought up as, that's going to be totally financed by private money. Well, nobody's turned up with the money, So I'd say, that's probably indefinitely off,
Okay, and this Freshwater Institute, is that part of this plan? That's something that's been talked about?
Well, that's been talked about with the University of Memphis. And,
but that's not a formal part of this $70 million plan.
There hadn't been an actual proposal made.
Okay. And then the other one is, and I'll go back to Bill, and you talked about Shelby Farms and disclosure, I'm on the board of the Overton Park Conservancy. I believe the Hyde Foundation certainly supported that. What I learned in being on that board is operational expenses, upkeep, maintenance is just a huge part of what goes on, from restrooms to playgrounds to just keeping the land. Is that contemplated? Once that all this huge improvements may be made and all this work, it's a free and open park, so how will all of it be kept up? How will the operational maintenance budget, where will that come from?
Well, in the design, there's been a lot of focus on a design that does not require a lot of maintenance. You see the trees and the shade and those kind of things. Those actually don't require a lot of maintenance. We've, put in hundreds and hundreds of trees at Shelby Farms Park, and that's the easy part of the equation. And we don't think it's going to be exorbitant. Some of the things that do require more maintenance, I think, have been exited out of the plan, like the splash pools and those kind of things. And mainly what we want is to provide some contour to it, where it's not just a flat pancake with no shade. I mean, in the summer, going down there, you know, it's you get fried with no shade whatsoever. So really, it's places people can sit, shade, and those kind of things are pretty common. And it just, you know, a lot of people think, well, where's all that money going? Well, when you got to change all the drainage and do all that, and of course, part of it, like I think it was close to 10 million, was allocated way back when for the cobblestones, and it's just been a long process of getting I forget who, it's Historical Society, whoever has jurisdiction over that, to get them proven. That part should kick off any time now.
Okay. 10 minutes left, we'll go back to Bill.
And I think the last word that I saw was that the cobblestones would start in October, that renovation would, and that there would be some work on the north end of Tom Lee Park, probably next to the cobblestones. Is that your understanding?
That's what I understand, yes.
Yeah. Is this controversy surprising to you?
Unfortunately, I found over the years that everything that, you know, we've been involved in that we think, you know, is going to ultimately be great for Memphis was very controversial. Think of the Grizzlies in the FedEx Forum. I mean, my God, I spent a year, you know, trying to convince people that this would be great for the city. And the whole reason, you know, I got involved in the basketball, the NBA, was I was convinced it was something that would bring our city together, and that it would highlight Memphis in a way to the country that it hadn't been before. And I think it's accomplished those goals. And I think today everybody is really excited and glad the Grizzlies are here. But you know, you go down the list, it's always something. I mean, the AutoZone ballpark, I mean, that we had controversy over that. Civil Rights Museum, when we were starting that, there was opposition to that. Today, everybody loves these things. So I've just you know, our approach at the foundation is that if we see something that we really think is going to be great for our city and that Memphians will embrace, we take the long view. We just assume there's going to be bumps along the road, you know. I mean, initially the Green Line, a lot of people said, oh, that's going to be horrible for our neighborhood. And of course today, it's house values along the Green Line have gone up. Everybody loves the Green Line. They were all worried about security and all. And now each person's building their own pathway to the Green Line. So, you know, it's just part of the process. You know, when you're doing, you know, public projects, public-private projects, there's always going to be controversy. But I think, you know, what we try to do is focus on now, is this really great for our city? And if we're convinced it is, we'll just persevere.
So when the Hyde Family Foundation considers getting involved in something, is the plan that you want to see, that you think is the best and highest use, is that plan always there at the outset, or do you contribute some thoughts on that and some thoughts about the direction of it?
No, I mean, it evolves. I mean, number one, we try to, I mean, usually we're supporting a certain existing organization with the plan they've come up with. We may contribute ideas or thoughts to it. We want the citizens to give ideas and thoughts. I mean, just like on Chevy Farms Park, we had a long process involving citizens. There's a model of the new design of Tom Lee Park down at Beale Street Landing. In fact, I encourage people to go look at that model, because I think, you know, I looked at every piece of paper they produced on the thing, but looking at that model, it all becomes crystal clear.
One of the other things you're involved with right now is the Brooks Museum relocating from Overton Park down to a location over the riverfront. It's where the fire station is downtown right now, and the adjacent parking lot.
Right.
It's last number I heard was maybe $110 million project. Again, a lot of private money. I think maybe some of the TDZ money and some goes into that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Some public infrastructure and so on. Why? I mean, this was one that was met with both cheers, like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have this world-class, incredible, internationally renowned design team put a museum on the riverfront, and then other people, again, back to no one's ever completely happy. Why leave the park? Why leave that historic location?
That's a great question, and that's one we really chewed on and recognize that we've been a long-term supporter of the Brooks. We've been a long-term supporter of the Shell. We were a long-term supporter of the College of Art and the zoo and the new Overton Park, park. We support all of them, and they asked us that they've been considering for the last 30 years about they desperately needed to add on to the Brooks, and that's how I originally got involved in it. They asked me to look at all their plans and see what I thought. Well, the problem was the 73 edition wasn't built properly, so they have to take that down, and the plan was always take it down and add on. Well, the deeper I got into it, the problem they have today in their current locations is no parking. The Shell, which we love.
They could just park on the Greensward. They could just put all the cars out there.
Well,
we got it. We did
don't
it.
raise
We got
that
it
issue.
Sorry.
No, but there's no parking. We love the Shell and we support it, but since it's been such a success, it used to be a good source of revenue for the Brooks, special events, weddings, and all that. Well, during the whole time the Shell's operating, nobody's going to book an event because they've got to compete with the sound and the parking and all that. And then, at the end of the day, you do an add-on, you're still locked in right there. And of course, there was a huge amount of work that had to go just to bring the existing buildings up to snuff.
The parking downtown, people are worried about that because a certain amount of the existing parking garage is going to be used. Will there be enough parking for the Brooks? I mean, are we just exchanging the problem of parking and access from Midtown to downtown?
No, it's ironic that every project we've been involved in, they're saying, parking is going to be a huge problem. Just like on the FedEx Forum, we did an extensive parking survey, and there was way more parking than was required. The problem is Memphians' historical mindset is they don't want to walk 2 or 3 blocks. They want to drive right there. And actually, on the location for the Brooks downtown, there's going to be a parking garage built under the site. The actual number of slots hadn't been determined yet, but that's part of a whole survey we're doing. But really, I think the same result is going to be there. You look at the availability, and it's there.
Well, before I go to Bill, just a few minutes left. Will you be involved with what happens next to the Brooks? And you mentioned College of Art. Obviously, College of Art is closing in the next year. Hyde Foundation is somewhat to very involved in the future of those 2 facilities, right? Okay. Yeah.
Well, we funded a consultant to come in and conduct a process to try to help solicit and see what the highest and best use of both of those buildings are.
Yeah.
And they're and they're real gems, and we're very concerned that we get a high and good use for it.
Yeah, let me just with a couple minutes. I'm going to actually stick with this. One more question that I'm curious about. We've talked about a number of projects, but you've also, the Hyde Foundation has been involved with funding education. You're very much associated with these public spaces and public parts. Things like New Memphis Institute that you have this wide range of things that you've done. You've given away, much of this came from your personal fortune, right? Correct? Why? Why do you give it all? Why do you give so much money away? And why has this been part of your mission as a person?
I believed, from day one, and my grandfather and my father believed in giving back to the city where they'd been fortunate enough to prosper. And the way I've always looked at it is, I've had the good fortune of being successful in business, and I think one of the great privileges that comes out of that is be able to support your hometown and try to improve the city for all the citizens. And I just, since I retired from running AutoZone, I've spent over half my time on focusing on Memphis. And we're a mid-sized foundation, and we chose a long time ago to focus 90% of our resources on Memphis, because Memphis is a large enough city to have all the same problems and opportunities of any urban center, and yet it was something where we could get our arms around and think we could help really make a difference. Because remember, in this, particularly when you're trying to deal with public-private stuff, it's really more the sweat equity than it is the capital. The capital's important, but it's working with everybody in the system to try to get a good outcome for our city. And we have a lot of needs in our city because we got a large low-income population. I mean, education, which Barbara and I in the foundation have been involved in for over 25 years, to me that's the most important work of all, because I believe, particularly for low-income people and those kids, their best route to escape their circumstance is a quality education. And unfortunately, for decades, our public system was failing the children in Memphis, and that's been true all over the country. And so the best empowerment of the individual to become a productive citizen is a quality education.
We will leave it there. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Bill. And thank you for joining us. Join us next week for a show on the World Golf Championship. Have a good night.